Okay. And we are live, and this is great. Welcome everybody to BLS015 Show and Tell with the one and only CHAU TRAN. CHAU, how are you doing?
Good, how are you? Thanks for having me on today.
I'm doing very good. We had a few technical issues while starting out. Start all with me messing up the time zone, rescheduling the event, and I lost connection to the YouTube, but I'm super glad we're here. We have 12 people watching in the stream. Hello, everybody in the chat. It's an honor to have you all here. Today, we are going to talk and do a live coding session with the component store from NgRx. So that's super exciting. Both CHAU and I have been working with the component store. Maybe you can share a little bit, tell us a little bit what you've used it for.
Yeah, sure. So for the component store, I was refactoring a condition builder. So what a condition builder is it's like a query builder for conditions to actually ingest some data into the system. So if you think about a condition, you would have a group of conditions, and in each group of that condition, you will have another group, or you have the conditions themselves. So now I have that tree structure, and I was thinking component store would be very nice to integrate with that kind of structure, because now I have the tree to manage inside of the component store as my source of truth. And then in my condition, the group will have the condition group store, and then the node would have the condition node store, and then I have those two to manage the UI of the group or the node, and it takes the data from the condition builder store. So it comes out very nice.
And so it's basically a nested usage of a nested component store. You have one top-level builder, and then you have a store for the condition.
And one thing is that because of the component store is provided locally to the component, so when you render recursively the component on the template, that component store that tied to the component that gets rendered recursively will get a new instance for each new component that gets rendered. So it's very nice. That plays very well.
Awesome. Yeah, cool. And we looked at it together, and we figured out it's cool to share this. So I'm going to share my screen here and get rid of the caption. Let me take a look. How do I get rid of this? Yeah, just hide it. So we have a sample app that I built for this. It will be available. It is available on GitHub, and I'll share the link with you all in a little bit. But this is basically a mimicked version, a simplified version of the workflow builder or the condition builder that CHAU works with in his day job. So it allows you to create a new. I should start a new one. Should be checking out which one gets added. So the last one gets added here. So this is basically an empty condition group, and what you can do here is add various groups. And each group have conditions. Now, this sample app doesn't use component store yet. So our goal today is to add component store to this sample. And to make things a little bit easier to grasp, we're going to start out with this sample app, where it's a one-page, basically single-page component with a few subcomponents, but we can add a to-do here, and we can mark the to-do as done, and we can delete them. And this is probably the first simple example. And what we're going to do today is something new on BLS, for me at least, and that is we're going to do peer programming in the way that first half hour I'm going to run you through the code and going to try and implement the component store for this to-do list. And then we're going to hand over to CHAU, and he's going to share the screen, and he's going to pick up the condition builder. And we hope that this is interesting for everybody watching. Let me quickly go over the chat to see. I don't have chat integration today, but I see Abel de la Fuente. Hello from Barcelona. Hello, Abel. Efe Bank, Can Nguyen, and Camtis, and Derlis Dominguez. Hello, everybody. It's awesome that you're here. Yeah, we had a little technical issue, so I can't highlight chats today. Nguyen. And but we should be good. Okay, cool. So without further ado, let me walk you through the app. I think CHAU also hasn't seen it yet, so this is probably new. I shared a few screenshots, but that's it. So this is a basic Angular app. As you probably know, I do most apps in NX, but I thought for the ease of use in this app and make the sample more approachable for everybody, I thought I'd do it in an Angular CLI app. So we're running Angular 11 here. And inside the app, let's take a quick look at the routes. I'm lazy loading the homepage. I'm lazy loading the to-do and the workflow page. Now the homepage has one component, and it just lists my my two main blocks, if you will. So that will be this page, 2 blocks. And then the to-dos, to start out with the more simple one, if we click into to-dos, we see that we have one component here, it's just the to-do component. Now, this is far from optimal, but that's probably one of the goals. Like we're having an app that's built without really thinking about how we properly structure, how we properly manage it. So I just made it work. And this is a huge one. This is way too big for a component. So we can take a look at like, how would we restructure this? But most importantly, I think that I'm calling in here to a service, which is the to-do service. And this service is backed by Firebase.
Awesome.
I have some arbitrary loading delays here that allow us to do loading state. But we support listing the to-dos, adding new ones, deleting ones, and toggling them from not done to being done and back. So this is the pretty simple one. Let's take a look at the files here. That's features, to-dos. Yeah, so this is the module we looked at. This is one component in the model. But this. Then the bit more involved one would be the workflows module here, where we're providing a workflow service, which is very similar to the other one, where we have we can get a list of workflows, we can get an individual workflow, we can add, delete, and update a workflow. So this is super similar to the to-do list. And then here we have 2 routes. One is the list, which shows us basically a table here with loading state. And the more interesting one is the workflow detail module here, where we say workflow detail component. And this is where we actually render out the workflow group. And I think this is where the meat of the bulk of the work is going to be done. Mm-hmm. So we're dividing it into workflow group components and workflow condition components. And if we open workflow group, we can see that right here, we are doing some recursion because we say, oh, you know what? If this node has children, if it's a condition, render the condition. If it's a group, render a group. And the recursive part basically is this snippet here. So that's it for an introduction about the basic app. I'm not sure if you have questions or comments with what you see right now, CHAU, or are we just going to get started?
No, just get started. I think I got a pretty good gist of what's happening.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to start out with this this component store. Now, one thing that we need to fix, one thing that works right now, which is great, is that things update automatically, and that's basically because I used Firebase. So Firebase, as you probably know, updates content and changes in the Firestore automatically. And while it's super nice for a lot of apps, it kind of defeats the purpose of our demo, where we want to manually trigger the refresh. So what we want to happen, which is more like a real life situation, for instance, a REST API or a GraphQL API, where you make a change and then you basically have to nudge the API or ping the API like, hey, give me the updated data. And in order to do this, I think the first thing I'm going to do is basically break the awesomeness of Firebase right now, where it doesn't automatically update. And I think the right way to do that is to take one. So we can add the take operator from RxJS and say take one. And I think that this should do what I intend to do, because then it will basically unsubscribe right after the initial load. Let me also pop open the terminal here so we can see any errors that we might have. But here it goes, saves, and now we see that it doesn't update automatically. So after save, we do the save, but it now no longer updates. And this is probably a very common scenario for everybody working with backends in Angular or in any front-end framework, if you will. You need to make a change and then basically ask the API, give me the updated data. So this is what we simulated here. And then if I do a hard refresh on the page, we should see that it now has a few more items. There you go. It now has all these items. So that's that. Let me go ahead and do a little bit of cleanup here. So I'm going to delete one, and we see again now the deletes also don't update the state automatically. I should be left, when I now do a refresh, I should only have the oh nice one. That most likely CHAU popped in there. So cool. So to do this with Component Store, and what I've learned from Alex is that you start out with a new file, and we're going to call this todos.store.ts. And todos.store.ts is a class, and it gets decorated by the injectable decorator. So if you think about this from Angular terms, you can see this as any other service, basically. And this also means that we need to provide it. So what I'm going to do here in todos module, I'm going to provide, no, I don't, I'm not going to provide it here. I'm going to go to my component, provide it in my component. But because it's a service, if you like, you could provide it also in your component. So this is the first step. We're going to provide, create a service and provide it. And what we're going to say here is it extends Component Store, which I don't have installed. This is exactly the same how it went with Alex. So I'm going to say yarn at NgRx Component Store. Let this run for a small second.
Yep. And I just want to point out that Component Store, even though it has the NgRx prefix or scope, is not really related to the NgRx store. So you don't think that you have to depend on NgRx ecosystem to use Component Store. You can just use Component Store by itself to get introduced to the idea of indirections, and then you can pick up state management later.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. It shares the scope, and it's in the same repo, and it will be published with the same release, but it's by no means tied to the NgRx global store. And I think also if people probably might have an idea like NgRx is complicated because it's the concept. If you're new to it, this is probably a different beast. It's way easier to wrap your head around, I think.
It depends on how we do.
It depends on how we do it. Yeah, that's definitely true. So after installing it, I can extend Component Store, and we need to pass it in an interface or a shape here. And according to what I've learned, this would be todos state. And then I'm going to have my editor make an interface for me. And because we're handling with todos plural, I'm going to say this takes a to-do array. And I think it's nice because I have a saving indicator.
Yep.
To add a saving Boolean here. Now with the Component Store, if you want to initialize state, there are several things to do, but I like to do this in the constructor. You can pass it into the super here. You can say, okay, saving by default is false because we will manually toggle it. And todos, I think we're going to, no, we might start out with null actually. You know what? I'm going to make todos optional so that we can detect whether we have one or whether it's an empty array. This is probably a nice thing to diverge. And then the next thing that I see myself doing after using it, let me close the terminal here. I generally start by making the view model because this is the one that we expose to the component. So I say VM $, read only VM $, equals this.select. This.select passes a method and returns back an object. And in this method, we can find todos and saving. So these are the properties that we're going to expose to the component. And we will render them here to saving. And then in order to use this, what we can do in our component, the first upper or the first outer thing we have is an ngIf, an ng container that calls into an ngIf. I need to inject it first, sorry. So I got it provided here, now I need to inject it. Private, read-only, to-dos store is a to-do store. And here I can say, okay, $$ equals this dot to-do store dot $.
So real quick, Bram, so I'm seeing saving and loading there. What's the difference between these two?
That's a great question. It looks like I also have a loading state. And this is, the initial load is triggered by the loading state. And the saving, so there's a difference between loading the data initially and after updating, showing a saving box. And there's a way I can demonstrate this, and that's basically increasing the delay. So I have a delay of 3000 here, but if I set the delay to 2 seconds, then it should be visible. So when we then move back, then we see the 3 little dots. Here, this is the loading state. It's now fetching data from the backend. Okay. Now we have it. And if we add a new to-do, let's add new to-do, and we see the saving state. And this is basically to, if you use the same one, then it will mean that it will block out all the things in the view. So this is basically something that a placeholder for the new item that will be placed in the list.
Okay.
But it's a great point that you pointed out, because what we probably want to do to mimic this in our component store, also set the loading state. Yeah, great point. Loading. And let's, by all means, and I think this is also false by default. And once we do the loading, once we start calling out to the API, we set loading to true. And once we save, we do basically the same. So this is, that's a great point. Let me quickly get rid of the delays here so that we don't keep waiting 2 seconds each time. So I injected the store here, to-do store, and I assigned $, and I'm going to mark this read-only as well, because why not? $, equals to this dot store dot $. And for those of you not aware with the term, VM stands for view model. So data modeled to basically help you render your view. And in order to use it, we're going to say add an ng container and do the ngIf syntax. ngIf $, pass it through async pipe, and make it available under the local variable VM. For now, I'm just going to print it out, and we're going to take a look at it. This should have a few, like basically our initial state rendered on top of the screen. There we go. It's saying saving false. Now, why doesn't it say loading? This is something I've run into several times, probably you as well, CHAU. It's because we didn't define it in the view model.
Yep.
But this is something, if you store something in your store, if you save something in your store, you define something in your store, and it doesn't get printed, make sure you check your VM $ to make sure it's there.
So I think B, if the shape of your to-do state is the exact shape of your VM, then you just do this .select without having to do a projector.
Right. So you can just say this .select.
If then do as a state. I think that should work.
I think that should work as well. Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah. So this is basically the way to share the whole state. And if you want to be more specific, then you're going to do this one. So let's say you have an internal property, maybe something you want to store in the state, but you don't want to expose. Then that would then you would go for this more specific way.
I would say something like selected to do. Like
right.
When you want to view detail of one, you would store the selected to do in your state, but you don't expose it, but you actually expose the selected to-do itself, not selected to-do ID.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great example. So let's move back to the component here. So what we now can do is basically pull down this ng container and wrap our whole component into this. That will reorder it. And what I think I want to do here, so let's look at how I use this. And this is basically the issue that I didn't split it up neatly, but I got an item here. If there's no to-dos, basically here is where I'm currently looping over my to-dos $, which I get from Firebase. So I would say the first thing that I can do here is change this to-do $, for vm.todos as to-dos. And this way I can leave the rest of my code as is.
Yep.
But it means that I can get rid of my to-do $, down below. So I'm going to get rid of this one, comment it out for now. And I'm going to do this with a few more things, because my add to-do method here, this is being called, and I pass in a reference to the input. So I'm just going to pass in the HTML input so I can clear it out. And the same for the button here, and the same goes for delete to-do. Delete to-do. Here is where I just put in a delete. So, and toggle to-do functions the same. So what I can do here is basically comment this one out, and this call into the service, comment it out. And this is basically what we want to replace, right? So we can see we have fetching of the to-dos, we have the adding a to-do, and delete and toggling. And this is basically what we all want to delegate to our new to-do store.
Mm-hmm.
And the great thing is that, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to emphasize that now the first thing we need to do is to load the to-dos first.
Correct, yeah. And what you can see here is that the editor already grayed out the service because it's no longer being used. And that means that we don't use service here, but we do use the same service in the to-do store. So I'm going to get rid of it here, open the to-do store, and here in the constructor, inject the same store.
Nice.
Nice, that's a great start. So now this store will be responsible for all interaction with the backend. And let's quickly render out or write down here. So we want to have load items, or load to-dos. Let's be more specific. Load to-dos. We want to have add to-do, delete to-do, and toggle to-do, And this is all what we want to do. And start with the first one. And this is kind of nice because, okay, I want to update one more thing, because right now we do this.saving here. We check it in our template, saving, but this is no longer saving. This is now vm.saving. And the same goes for, let's see if I use it at another place. If saving, okay, so here if vm.saving, and the same goes for loading, because we don't use the local product property anymore. We say vm.loading. So we take everything from the view model. That makes that we no longer need these, and we no longer need these. So this is a pretty nice cleanup, if you ask me. And now, to be good Angular citizens, we're going to say implement on init, and we're going to, in the ng on init, we're going to trigger a, where did my init go? Here it is. Here are we going to trigger the loading in the to-do store. So we're basically going to say load to-dos, which is a method. Now let's implement this method. Load to-dos, here it is. And this is an effect, if I recall correctly. And if I recall correctly as well, this either takes an argument, but in this case, we then take an argument. So we call it trigger $. And what we then do is trigger $.pipe. And inside this pipe, this is where the action happens. And because we are going to call out to an observable, which is the loading the items, I'm going to use a switch map. And I need to import it. I don't take any arguments. And what I'm going to do here is this.service dot to-dos $, which is basically my method on the service to load the to-dos. And I'm going to pipe here. See.
You're gonna pipe on the to-dos $.
Ah, you're right. Yes. So pipe on the to-do $, and this will give me results. So I can now use the normal map, take the to-dos, and use the set state method, which takes the state and returns a state. So I'm going to return an object, destructure the state. And this should have auto completion. And now we're going to say load the to-dos. And if all went well,
actually, I don't think you want a map there. Instead, you want a tab.
Yeah, you're right. And actually, I think what we want to do here is use the structure with the catch error one.
Yep. And I think there's something still missing here. So right now, I don't see that you handling the saving or the loading state.
That's a great point. Yeah. Okay, that's a totally great point. So what we want to do is on this load to-dos, first thing we're going to tap, and we're going to say this dot set state, and I think there is a shortcut to do this. I'm not sure what it is. Maybe people in the chat know this, or maybe you even know this. What I do here, first step, we set loading to true. And this will toggle our loading property here. And then once we load it, we can say loading is false. Yeah, that's a very good point. And in a second, I'll take a look at another operator that will be in RxCS in the next release, which is the tap response operator. And that handles the tapping of the response and the error handling that you probably want to do, because at this point we also don't have error handling.
Correct.
So if we now switch back to the app and it refreshes here, then we should see that it gives us our initial state. We see the waiting and we see the loading. It's here in the VM.
Yep. Very nice.
That's a very nice one. I'm going to get rid of the debug info, and I'm going to basically delete the pre tag that I have here. So I'm going to get rid of this one. And then the next thing that we can do is do the saving. So we can say this.todo store.add to do. And I can either pass in an object here, but in this case, it's really the to do is just one string. So I probably just go for task.value, which is the value of this element, and then clean up the element, empty out the element. And in a real life app, you probably want to have some better way to do this, but I think for now this works. And then in our to-do store, we can go implement the add to do, which is an effect that takes a string. And this string, I think, then will become the name of the item that we're talking about. So that's to do $, because this is an individual to do. Say pipe. Now we're going to say tap, and we're going to set saving to true. So this.set state, and we take state and we destructure it. And I think there is an updater which is shorter than, and I think also the set state has a different syntax that we can use. Have you used the updater, John?
Yes.
Okay. Would that make this easier?
It would.
Okay.
Like you don't have to have spreading syntax over and over again. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna use the updater with the workflow.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's perfect. Let me quickly do one quick check to see if we're still on YouTube, and it looks like we still are. That's awesome. I'm really sorry I can't promote the chat, but Freddy Montes says Component Store for the win. And I know Freddy is also a big fan. He made a post on Component Store. I think he shared it on lookout.dev. So definitely give it a check. If you want to learn more about lookout.dev, check BLS015, on which I had Brian Love, and he went over how to do it. I'm going to quickly go ahead and implement this because my time's almost up. I got like three or four more minutes, and I would love for this to work before. So here what I'm doing is taking the to-do, which at this point is a string, and I'm going to say this.service.add_to-do. Take the input of an ID, but that's optional. But the task, we should name this task. It's a way better name. Task. And I'm going to set done to false by default. And I'm going to add a pipe onto this one. And then I'm going to use the tab operator here. And what I want to do inside this tab, I think, is load the to-dos again. And that should work because, I mean, we can either pick up the to-do and add it back, but I'm more used to doing a new call out to the database. So this then would basically be this.load to-dos.
Quick question, Bram. What does this service.add_to-do return?
That's a great point. Let's take a quick look. Whatever Firebase returns.
Do you know what Firebase returns?
We should log it out to give that a go because I don't know from the top of my head.
No, the reason I brought that up is if the this.service.add_to-do returns the new to-do or the added to-do, we can actually not having to load the to-dos here, but we can do something called optimized update or optimistic update that we can just set the state to the new to include the new to-do instead of like calling the backend again.
I think ideally we do this. I think one of the downsides of using Firebase for this specific is that it doesn't return the ID. But let's take a quick look. Test add to do, hit enter. It says saving, and now we quickly saw the loading one. So this is the issue why we don't want to use the loading if we want to have items. And this is the thing that we're getting back. And I'm not familiar enough with Firebase to
parse it.
Yeah, to pull out the thing. So yeah. So let's go over. But that's definitely a great point and probably a more real. Also, I don't have Prettier on. I don't think I have Prettier configured. I do have Prettier configured. Okay, so let me quickly set up my IDE so it prettifies on safe. It's not there. Okay, let's not bother. So next thing is going to be delete to do, and I'm going to quickly copy and paste this, and probably all been there. Say delete to do, and
one more thing, Brent, is the add to do is the create operation, so we might not want to use switch map.
Right, that's a very good point. Switch map will break off the operation that's basically in flight and will lead to side effects. What would be your suggested operator here?
We would want to use merge map or exhaust map, but merge map would be easier.
Right.
So the reason why switch map wouldn't work, or wouldn't work, but not recommended for create, update, or delete operation, or basically write operation, is that even though it gives you a sense of the API call has been canceled, but the backend still work on your request. And even though it says cancel, but your new item still be added to the database.
And I think we can even demo this because we have a timeout here. And what we do is we pass it on to the server. The server will call to the service, and that has a timeout, but we already empty the value. So what I think, and I think I prevented this by
setting the saving.
Setting the input to read only. So I cannot, if it's saving, I cannot do it twice. But let's get rid of this let's get rid of this real quickly because it's a nice thing to show, and increase the delay on saving here. So I'm going to just make it 2 seconds again. And then when I add this one back in, then we should see, do I have merge map now or switch map? Why switch map is not a good idea. So let's use switch map here again for a second in the add. And then we should see if I add 2 to-dos at the same time, 1, enter, 2, enter, 3, enter, 4, enter, it will only add 1, most likely 4. There you go. And this is the issue why you don't want to use switch map for write operations. I think that's a very, very good point to add here. So, and then back to merge map, save it and refresh it. Now we're going to do 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, enter 6, enter 7, enter 8, enter. Now it should add them all. There you go. Add them all. Perfect. Great point. Great issue and great solution, honestly. And I also, here, when I go back after the second tab, we want to set saving to true because we're no longer saving. So I want to get saving to false, basically.
Then I think it would be better to have the load to do to set the saving state as well to false on line 31.
On line 31 here, set saving state. Yeah.
Yes, and we'll set saving state to false. You don't have to do it on line 43.
Right.
And then I think removing the spread too, because that's all of your state already on line 30. So removing the spread.
Yeah. Yep. So this is basically initializing your state all over again.
No. So now in this case, you can use the object syntax instead of like the function syntax. So you can pass an object into the set state.
Like this?
Yep. If you set it on your state.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. I love it. Now this, people, is why you should have guests like CHAU on your live stream, because you learn an awful lot. And yeah. Juan Herrera. This is my buddy from Medellin. I love seeing you here, man. I'm super excited. This is a great day. Juan helped me a lot earthing down here in Medellin, in Colombia, and showing me the wonderful world of the community here.
Awesome.
So awesome. Yeah, this is great. So cool. We're gonna do some copy pasting here because I still want to get this working rapidly.
Yep.
So delete to do, we're gonna take an ID here, I think. Delete to do here takes input.id. Okay, so we're going to take an input. That's the ID as the whole to do. We're going to take the whole to do. I'm totally excited that Juan showed up. This is so this is going to be to do $. We're not going to do the saving state because we're not really saving data, so we don't want to do this. And then this will be to do. And then delete to do will input this to do. This all looks well, and we're going to load to-dos again, and let's do the same for toggle while we're at it. So we're going to do toggle to-do, rename this to toggle to-do, and inside the to-do service, the toggle to-do takes a to-do as an argument, and it does what it needs to be doing. So that means that with these two very similar methods, we can now go back to our component, and where we use this, we can say, okay, this .to-do store .delete to-do and pass in the to-do straight away. And the same here for toggle, this .to-do store .toggle to-do, toggle to-do and pass in the to-do itself here. And this will cause that we can get rid of this line, these here, and all the way on the top. And if Alex is watching, I'm going to make Alex happy and get rid of my public here, because Alex always says you don't need to mark public. It's public. I know, but it's something that my editor does, and I'm too lazy. So we're back at the app, and let's see if I can now toggle one. Okay, so here's an issue with having the loading state each time, because now you see it loads, and we actually only want to show this loading bar if we don't have any to do. So I'm going to quickly fix this in the view, and this is where we do the loading bar if loading, and if not vm.todos.length. So because you don't have to show this loading indicator if there's any to-dos in the store. This should fix this inconvenient situation. And now, okay, length is not defined. I should use the Elvis operator. We don't initialize to-dos inside our initial set, which is exactly what we want to check. And now if we mark one as done, it should be marked. And remember, we have a delay, so this is the reason why things don't show up directly. But in essence, it's all working. I'm going to quickly get rid of the delays because it was nice to show it, but I'm going to set the delay to like 50 milliseconds, and here as well 50. That's easy to later add them back in to show the loading state. But it looks like we converted our item to-do list. And sorting is another issue. This would probably be better if you want to sort it, but it looks like this all works. So yeah. Any comments, tips, tricks?
I do have comments. So now can you go back to the to-dos component? I want to show to the viewer. Now in your to-dos component, you no longer have any subscribe. You don't have any subscription that you have to manage, because to-do store we manage, a component store we manage all the subscription for you. And because we provide the to-do store on the to-dos component providers, it has the same life cycle as the to-dos component. So when a to-dos component gets destroyed or you navigate away from to-dos component, then your store is cleaned up.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point. In this particular case, I was already using the async pipe, so I wasn't doing a manual subscribe and not doing an unsubscribe, but this is definitely a valid point.
I saw you do the subscribe on the delete and the toggle when you're still using the service.
You're totally right. You're totally right. Yeah, that's a very fair point. Yeah, this subscribe here. Yeah. One thing that I really like, I myself am not a big tester. Like I've done it. A lot of my clients don't ask me to do testing, which I know is bad, but I'm trying to get back in the habit. And I've seen CHAU testing a to-do store, and it's wonderful to look at because you don't have to worry about any of the internals. As long as you can mock your store, it's basically just any other JavaScript or TypeScript class that you're testing. This is also, I think, a super nice thing. And the last thing I want to point out, this is super portable. So if you have an other part of your app that looks similar to this to-do list, which often is common, like you want to add stuff, delete stuff, and update it, you can basically copy it over, start reworking it, and it takes so many things into account for you. So yeah, I'm personally super excited about this technology.
Another comment that I want to make is, now let's go to your to-dos component template. So you see that Bram has a big template here, and then all of a sudden you want to start thinking about componentize these the template, and you might want to grab you want to break up the add to do card out to its own component, and then bring the logic to add the to do to that component. And you know what? Because the add to do will be a child on the to do's component, you have the same instance of that to-do store. So you can inject the to-do store in the add to-do component and use the same method and call the same method.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. So in a more traditional, well-designed, well-organized Angular app where you have your container components and your presentational components, you add to-do form will probably live in its own component, have an input and an output, or in this case, just inject the store directly and call into the store directly. Yeah, and I think if we squint our eyes a bit and we look at this, then the big chunk will be the ones that I collapsed. So this is your add form, and this would be your list, and the rest is basically all Tailwind set up to make it look somewhat pretty, which in most apps that I work on would live outside in some shared component anyway, where you have like a page component. Which I think the component builder has. So yeah, I think we can make a commit. I can push it up, and then we can switch gears and have you work on the component builder, on the condition builder. So let me quickly do this. Keyboard is on repeat. So And this is, I mean, it's a refactor actually. Refactor introduce add component store to dos. Awesome. I'm going to push straight up to main. So not going to branch, making life more difficult than it already is. And I'm fine with you starting to share a screen if you want to pull it in. And then we can take a look.
All right, let me share my screen now.
We're going to get back here. Then I'm going to, this is always the nice point of my stream where I can go sit back, relax, and watch my guests do the work. So there you go. You should be on share right now.
So I just pull
the
latest. I'm going to run npm install now.
Yeah, use yarn, please, so it will use the same log file. I'm using yarn here.
Oh, so yarn.
Yeah, so that should work. And I'm gonna start it all off here.
While that's running, let's make sure I have the right font size.
Yeah, so that's, I generally pick 18. That seems to be legible. Yes, awesome work, thanks. Then only the file tree, but we don't really need the file tree. We already went over the file structure.
Yeah.
So initially we had the idea of having a 1 hour stream and trying to stick it all in, but I think we can have a little bit more because Chau's other meeting got postponed. So that's cool.
Yep. And just a heads up, guys, I do not prepare any of this, okay?
Very good.
It's like completely live code, so we might not be able to finish, but I'll try my best.
But I think in any case, if we cannot really finish it right now, this might be nice material to take onto another stream. We might want to do a part 2. And because I really want to do the right thing by handling my errors, which I don't do right now.
Yeah, correct.
What I thought about is having some chaos monkey in there that just triggers error every other save or every 30% of the saves. So we can test that one out. That might be cool to test. And I would love to look at testing, how testing this, how simplified testing gets.
Let's do that in the next session.
Okay, cool. So this one, we're going to announce it next week. BLS015 is going to be having CHAU TRAN again, part 2, component store. Awesome. I love how these things come organically. So this is 50% is now the thing I'm waiting on. This is maybe the only downside of having Tailwind in your setup. It re-renders a bit longer sometimes. So for those of you that don't use Tailwind, definitely check it out. I fell in love with it after watching the official course on tailwindcss.com. It's really, really well presented way of how Tailwind works. And then for Angular specifically, ngNeat/Tailwind is the integration built by Chau himself. And you already got comments on this on the live stream. Darlise, my wife, says, "Hey Chau, I'm amazed that you're the collaborator of ngNeat Tailwind." Probably is impressed is the word she try to use.
Thank you.
So here, there's no workflows. Okay, this is interesting. I think there should be.
I just deleted them all.
Awesome. Okay, cool.
We work from a clean slate.
Very good. Very cool. Yeah.
So let me look at what you have here. So you have a workflow list. So that, or actually, this would be the component that I'm looking at right now, which is the list. And this will give you all the workflows. So this is a quick one. This is a quick one that we can just copy from the to-do store to manage the workflow list. So under workflows, I'm going to have a store. Right, I'm going to have a workflow store. This is to manage the workflow list screen right here. But when we go to the group and to the node we're going to need another store.
Yeah, right. And these don't inherit, so the workflow detail will never edit something in the other parent. They're not even parent-child. They're just separate routes.
Right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick workflow store. I'm going to extend the component store and have an injectable. And then my state for this one is first I need to look at frame. Actually, you know what? Let's bring this in here. Since it's a separate module.
Yep, I like it. And I think if we then want to be very, very strict, it should be maybe called workflow list store.
Yeah, let's do that. So let's do workflow list store. That web store for you and rename for you. Just saying, VS Code people.
Probably is an extension for VS Code.
Yeah, I think they do. I think they do.
Yeah.
So, all right, there we go. Now let's go to the store.
And we have WebDave here as well in the chat. Yeah, sorry folks, we had technical issues. I can't promote chats. Normally I would have you here. WebDave, schönen guten Abend. So cool. This is the state. And
so we have the workflow array, and then you have saving. And also Boolean loading. By the way, I am a semicolon guy, so let me turn on my prettier so that takes over. Workflow list state, my constructor. I'm going to set the workflows to an empty array, saving to false and loading to false. Right.
Yep.
Right. Then I'm going to do a little bit different than Bram. What I like to do is I usually have all of my selectors separately. So now I have my workflow selector, and then I have my workflow. I'm going to do the same thing for the loading and saving.
Yep. Okay. So you have separate ones, and you don't do the ng container one.
Right. And then on my VM, I usually do this workflow. This saving, this loading, and then I have my state here, which is workflow, saving, and loading, and that is what I usually do in my app.
Right.
Because
is there I'd love to know why.
Because sometimes in more complex in more complex component store, you might use D selector as your trigger or as the with latest from to grab the latest value to do something else, which I'm going to demo when we work on the nested store later.
Yep.
But this is usually what I have. And if you don't want to expose it, make this private.
Very cool. Yeah, very cool. So same usage from the component point of view, but gives you another moment to hook in actually loading these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So now back to my list. So the first thing is my VM. I'm going to have, actually, I forgot to provide.
Yep, same thing.
First thing you do is provide your store. So I'm going to have my workflow list store, and then you inject your store with only workflow list store. Then you have your VM. Workflow list store, store.vm. Same deal. Let's just have the ng container. NgF VM async as VM.
Yep, same deal here.
Right, now let's just do, actually, I'm gonna just hook it in. VM.loading, No, we don't know, or we don't. You know what? I don't really need that ngIf right there. Instead do VM.workflows.length.
You did get rid of the loading indicator with this last change. So if you, so the first part is there are no workflows, and this is.
I think this one is just to subscribe and get the workflow variable.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So
I don't think we need that anymore because now the workflow stays on the VM and it is subscribed.
Ah, you're just pulling it all out. Sorry, you were going fast. Yep. Totally.
I think I missed my variable name. Yep. So it's workflows. Now it should be good. VM.workflows is then saving, VM.saving, and I think that's it.
Yeah.
All right, now this can be gone, it's gone, this is gone. Add workflow, let's comment it out. Also delete. Right now we going to have load workflows, add workflow, and delete workflow. So let's work on the load workflow first. Actually, no, I don't need this anymore.
Yep. Can get rid
I
of
don't
service.
need the service. And the service go on here. Now let's do load workflows. So again, load workflow would be an effect. And I usually call my load workflow, my effect with effect. So to know for sure it is an effect and it's not an updater. With an updater, you would have something called set workflow, and it can be just set workflows.
Yeah, interesting.
And I don't need anything. It's just a trigger. And again, for trigger, I don't use trigger. I just do a $sign.
Just a $sign. Look at you being fancy and minimal. Okay.
That's just cool. $sign. So now tab, we want to set the loading state. State. Actually, this, no, because we only set the loading state once here. So I'm just going to do it once here.
Yeah.
Then we do a switch map. This dot service dot this guy right here.
Correct. Workflow
pipe. Do we need to change anything on here? Take 1, 2. Do we want to go that route?
Correct. We want to do take 1 so we don't get that it's basically as similar as a REST API as possible, or GraphQL endpoint.
I see. Let's see. I want to do something that is we still make use of that. We still make use of this workflow thing. But that's
actually fine. I want to quickly, if we have a second here, we probably have. It's our own session, so we can do whatever we like. This is great. Yeah. I'm going to share with you in the private chat here in Restream a link to a PR that just got merged into like 2 weeks ago, got merged into the NgRx platform repo. And this adds the tap response operator. And this is the new suggested way how you handle your work. Maybe you can share it in the screen real quick. But what this does is it handles your it's the suggested way to handle your data, and it reduces boilerplate, and it's pretty nice because you can have basically a custom operator, which is this one called tap response, and you pass in the first one is whatever you want to do on the basically next, and the second one is whatever you want to do on errors, and this is probably all you need. And what I did in my main project where I use Component Store was copy this tab response because it's not yet available and add it somewhere in my utils lib. And now I'm using this one. And then once it gets published, I only need to update my imports, and then it should work with this. So this might be a nice one to look at or to use.
I'm gonna add it there. I'm gonna take a look at that later.
Yeah.
I have a tag one here. Now we want to do a tab. Right, we want to this dot set state, and here we want to set all the state to workflows. Actually, this is workflows. Loading to back to false, and saving also back to false.
Yeah, basically resetting the whole state, just like we did.
Yep. And this here's one thing you see right here, the switch map. We don't expect any argument from the previous stream or from the outer stream to pass to our next observable. Here we can actually use a different operator called switch map 2, and we just pass the observable in without that error function.
Love it.
Right, so now we can call the NgRx net. Implement on net. Here we can do this dot workflow restore dot load workflow effects.
Awesome. And this should.
I think we can we can start seeing some data if my syntax is correct.
And looks like we missed one. I think you miss a parentheses here, ending parentheses from this dot effect.
Correct. You're right.
And prettier also reformats. That's often a good syntax, a good sign if. So now we don't have. Yeah, we don't have any workflows currently.
Shit. Okay, yeah. Let's do add workflow.
Yeah, it's a great point to add.
Add workflow. There's also an effect, and it's actually just a trigger, right? Do we take any input?
What it does in the current situation, it calls it untitled workflow and gives it a random ID. I think ideally you would prompt the user, or you would have a small form, like give a name of your new workflow. But I think the best real life scenario here would be, yeah, I basically pass this in.
So this group right here, is it the workflow item?
This is basically your top level group. So I figured there's always one group that has children.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna type in. I'm gonna let the component pass in the information to create the group.
Yeah.
So this would be my workflow item.
Correct.
And I would call this input. It's a saving, right? It's need saving.
Yep, this will get the saving. Set it's true.
Then I have the merge map and have my input, which I can. Do I need to? I don't think I need to do that. But now I can do service.add workflow, put in the whole input, and pipe to this dot load workflow effect. Now I can call the add workflow effect here, and I pass in exactly this, but I want to comment it out first.
Yep.
So now I have the random ID
Yeah, random ID is getting imported, and this is all mimicked to the application that CHAU showed me he was working on. So there's a little situation to create cute short IDs. So I basically mimicked it. Otherwise, you get a whole. There you go. Okay, it looks like this works, and then if you click add workflow, it should show the showing. Awesome. This, at least the basic works.
Oh,
now, we have the same issue with the
workflows length that.
Yep. So that should be a bit prettier. So we now see it on load, and then add one, load one.
Awesome.
Like a little nit, if you refresh again the page, you see that there is, if you do a hard refresh, you can see that it will, like Command R, just refresh the whole page. You will see that the loading indicator shows, and there are no workflows. And the there are no workflows, you only want to show it if we're not loading, because that's like, so the,
right.
Yeah, line 20 is basically the inverse of, if we're not loading and we have no workflows, then show there's nothing. Yeah, this is basically a nit, but it's kind of.
Right. So this is a good example to have a more composed or derived state that depends on some of your state in the store. So right here, I say loading for real, but this one is empty.
Yep.
So now you can go back to your VM, and now you can do this one is loading to loading, and workflow dot length. Oops, my bad. It's not true. But then now you have it's empty, then is loading, and workflow.
Yeah, not loading and not workflow length.
Is this one?
Yeah, is empty. Is are we not loading, and we don't have workflow length. So the second argument after the double ampersand also needs to be on line 32. So it needs to be not.
Right.
This is pretty interesting. I didn't think of this. I love this.
So now on your component, you see loading is now gone from the VM because we don't expose loading anymore. But now we have v.vm.is loading and vm.is empty.
Love it. Okay. Love it, love it, love it. This is a way more expressive way to do it. And we take care of the implementation detail, like how do we decide if we're loading or if we're empty. We take that back to the place closest to where we handle the data. I really like this.
Yep. And this is one of the things that helps with testing too, because now when you test or when you unit test the component store, you will be able to test this logic in separation of the actual rendering logic. But then when you go ahead and test the component, you don't have to worry about this logic. You just know that, hey, is loading, is it loading or is it empty, and that's all you need to know.
Awesome. Yeah, love it. Great detail here.
So let's go back to now. Do you see that it's working correctly?
Yep, it works awesome. And the only thing here we now want to do is probably handle the delete, which should be a fairly straightforward one.
Let's make sure that we have a delete workflow effect here. And what do we tag in?
Workflow, the whole workflow.
The whole workflow. So let's do a whole workflow and call it workflow.type. And also it's a merge wrap. We have a workflow service.delete workflow and just put it workflow.type tab and just upload workflow effect.
Awesome. So in a real life app, and the app where I use it that it's in production right now, I always do load items and handle error. So I got a method on the bottom of my store that is basically reload, or I think it's called handle reload or something. And that I pass into the pipe directly. So you got a really clean syntax, and it does error handling, it does the reloading, and basically anything you want. So that would be, maybe call it reload. And then this returns a method that does the pipe. So it returns a method that does that returns the tab.
I think that's all you need.
Yeah, it might be. Yeah, so this.reload. Yeah. So like this, and it gets more interesting when you also have the error handling in there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's nice. So now go back to my this.workflow list store dot delete, and I pass in the workflow. Right. Save.
Yep.
And check out this one. So now let's delete this guy. There you go.
There you go. Awesome. Nice refactor. Nice detail on the is empty and is loading. This is definitely something I'm going to refactor tonight. It's like, this is very
cool.
So,
now you can take a look again at your component.
Yeah.
That's all you have.
Yeah.
That's all you have to test. That is, hey, if I call add workflow on my component, all I need to know is it called the add workflow effect and the passing these. Same thing with delete workflow. And when you call NgRx, you only have to test, hey, did or have low workflows effect called or been called? And that's all you need to know.
Very good. Awesome. Yeah. Great implementation. I'd almost say make a quick commit of of this one, so people can figure out the first part that we did.
Refactor workflow list to use component store.
Awesome. Perfect. Then for the big one.
Yep. Now for the big one, we might actually how long?
I'm fine with postponing it to BLS16. So what we can do is take it, because we've been on here for more than an hour. So yeah, that's probably a good call. Let's move back to, let me see. Let's get rid of this. Oh, I still need to figure out how these things work. I can't computer. So yeah, let's move to the master detail view, the more advanced view on BLS16, which will probably be somewhere next week. I hope maybe Monday or Tuesday. We need to figure out a date that works for us both. But yeah, this has been super awesome. I really like. I like that you like it. We have chatted about it quite a bit, and we're both pretty much fans of Component Store. I think the Firebase team did a great job working this out, seeing the need. For me, it really cleaned up a lot of things I was trying to do manually, and that's been super powerful. I really have to hold myself back in not refactoring everything. So yesterday I needed to add a small feature, and then it's like looking at the code, doing the manual refresh thing and doing the manual work. And I really have to contain myself not to rebuild it, because you want to ship a feature, you promise your users that they will have the feature. They don't care about it, Component Store, but I definitely do.
So let me quickly go over what I think that's going to happen in the next in the BLS16.
Yeah,
is that so now you guys see let's say it's the workflow that we're working on right now. It has a parent group, and then each group will have another group or a list of conditions, or basically children of that group. And the group also has the ability to collapse. And each item, regardless of its condition or if it is a group, will have the ability to delete itself.
Yeah.
You say implement group delete.
Console log. Yeah, this was too hard to quickly hack it in. Basically, I think with Component Store this is way easier, because we have to write store. But yeah, this is. Yeah, go ahead.
Just saying. So you can tell that we have a couple of, I guess, separation in terms of UI state to manage. The first thing is the source of truth of where the data that provides for this tree, and then each group, because it has the collapse state, we don't want to store the collapse state of each group on the workflow store. manage the collapse state of the group is purely for UI. So we don't need that on the main store for this whole workflow.
Right.
But now that you can see that we have at least two component stores, one for the whole tree and one for each group. I might come up with something on the go to have like a condition store as well. Maybe we have like a select like a drop down in here, so we can select something. I don't know.
Yeah, or we can have a toggle that's like either on or off. This, which is I think similar to what you guys in your work do.
And we can have that toggle be managed by a form control, and we will look into how to connect the form control to an effect on a component store.
Awesome. And that can be a similar form control to how I do the add to do, where I basically push in a reference to the input.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Love it. Very cool. Yeah, so let's, I hope you'll be back on BLS015, which will be starting with next week. CHAU and I will look at Component Store Part 2, how we are going to do the component builder. Then CHAU is going to start off, and I might do something afterwards, maybe rework the to-dos, or maybe we can think of some other example.
Yeah.
I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that my to-do list errors out, that every other to-do with errors, and we're going to look at error handling, where we basically, instead of saving, we now get saving, and if this saving failed, then we're going to get an error message like, I cannot save this thing.
If we have time, we might get into testing your to-do store.
Yeah.
And the to-do component.
Awesome. I'm going to make sure the testing runs, that at least we have tests not failing, that we can have a clean starting state. We're going to look at the working on the condition builder and the to-do list part too.
Yep.
Awesome.
Awesome.
CHAU, thank you very much. Do you have something to push, something to announce? Maybe the new Angular Vietnam Twitter account that everybody should follow?
Yeah. I've been running Angular Vietnam Facebook group. Just a fun fact, is probably the biggest Angular community in the Southeast Asia area. We have over 13,000 members.
Wow.
That me and Tip is another Angular GDE that manage and share knowledge. And
How long have you been running this group?
Is since it was founded by Tip in 2017. I joined in 2018.
Very cool. Very cool.
He invited me to be an admin alongside him. So we've been doing all kind of sharing knowledge and like guide people, even talk about job or career path in terms of Angular, because when you go into like the job market in Vietnam, all you see is React and Vue and the other stuff. Angular is not so big there, but a lot of people have doubt about Angular. We dare to actually clear that doubt out for them.
Right.
We update them with all the information, latest from information from the community, from the Angular team, to clear that doubt and to lead them on the right career path in terms of Angular developers. And
very cool.
Just recently, I've been doing a stream called Angular Vietnam Office Hour, that every other week, or maybe sometimes every 3 weeks. And the last 2 streams have been in Vietnamese, because that's our target audience. But in the 3rd stream, we thought that the content of the stream was too good to not share with a product audience. So I asked the community to allow me to use English as the main language in these streams, and they agree. So starting from the 3rd Angular Vietnam Office Hour, which is the next stream, which is happening this Sunday, I'm gonna post on Twitter about it, but that's gonna be in English, and I'm gonna be sharing my experience with authentication, authorization in Angular.
Very, very cool. And okay, so everybody, I think the URL is NgVN on Twitter.
Yeah.
NgVN, go follow it, give them a like. It's a great community. It's awesome to see you sharing your knowledge and with your peers back over in Vietnam. thank you so much, Chow, for being on. I'm super excited that we're going to do a second one on Component Store. Who knows? We might even pull out a third one. With Lars, it started with 1, ended up with 3. Yeah, I'm super grateful that people want to join me on these things. We had great comments. Abel de la Fuente, thank you so much. Amazing live stream. Enea Jaolari, amazing. Great stream, guys. Thanks from Carnties. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm super excited to see that this is useful. And we'll be back next week. I hope you all have a great weekend, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.